Many different Tarkov players have their own personal gripes with the game in terms of progression, quests, balance, and overall mechanics. However, one thing most of these same players will agree on unanimously is how insane the map/level design is for each stage you find yourself walking around on. Unlike modern shooters like the newer Call of Duties, where they've been creatively bankrupt for years in terms of their general map design, BSG has somehow done the impossible and created larger scale maps that allow for tons of creative ways to navigate them. Each different location in the game feels completely unique from one another, and there are no two maps currently in the game that have any real semblance of similarities. It still blows my mind that we have 9 maps in the game, many of which have been iterated on and even expanded multiple times, that are this detailed and complex. Almost to their own detriment. We'll talk about that later. But there is something so special and honestly beautiful about Tarkov's level design that truly needs to be praised, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. This is pretty much just gonna be me gushing about the locations across Tarkov and what makes them so special and unique compared to one another, as well as other games. We won't be going into every single map and the specifics of them because we'd be here forever, but some high-level analysis should do the trick nicely here. So if you're excited about this as I am, be sure to leave your thoughts down below and subscribe for future videos. Let's start with how Tarkov's maps differ from other shooters. For one, they're usually larger than your average arena shooter map, with the exception of being Factory, which was conceptually made for close quarters combat. It was also one of the OG release maps alongside Customs and Woods. Some games are the exception in this case. Battlefield is usually more focused on the larger scale combat involving land, water, and air vehicles to create that sense of scale and you being involved in something that could be considered a war. Tarkov falls in between Call of Duty and Battlefield, medium to large maps with points of interest throughout to get you where you need to go. Now, some maps have more going for them than others. Customs, I would argue, has more points of interest than Woods, especially close to one another, but Woods is a larger map with a completely different emphasis. Customs is primarily mid-ranged engagements, but there are some spots and sightlines that allow for long-range and close-range combat. Woods is almost exclusively long-range fights. The design of the map is just that, a heavily wooded area with tall rocks and mountains to scale for use of precise, long-range weapons with heavy scopes on them. It's a sniper's paradise, and over time I have been able to experience that level of immersion, knowing that most other players on the map looking for action have ranged weapons and are lurking in the shadows, hanging out around areas with vantage points to spot anyone trying to relocate and get a better position. Not to mention, after Woods was expanded, we have more villages to loot in areas with a sense of isolation because they're so far away from the original parts of the map. The water helps too. It limits directions you can traverse on the map, as well as contextually adds a nice visual aspect to the map, because not every map has water on them, and those that do are usually coastal maps. Customs is my personal favorite map in the entire game. I would argue it's the most balanced regarding being able to experience every aspect of Tarkov in a single raid that makes it so interesting. The sense of wonder and mystique of trying to find your way across the map if you're new to the game. Its layout is relatively simple. It's a big rectangle where you need to get from one side of it to the other, and the points of interest are high. You have Big Red, old and new construction, old and new gas station, crack house, stronghold/fortress, not to mention all the other buildings on Boiler side or the storage area on Big Red side. It's impressive how they were able to stuff this map with so much to do. This map started off small and generally difficult to survive on because there were so many different choke points across the map when its initial iteration came out. But over time, BSG has expanded Customs twice, or maybe 3 times, I can't remember, and the pacing of the map has gotten so much better. It doesn't feel as though crossing that large bridge over the river is immediate death anymore, and getting around New Gas is also easier as well. There's a ton of things to do on the map. There will be times where all you see are PMCs, and then there will be raids where you never see another player. And while other maps can also have this happen, Customs to me, with no other players on it, feels the most peaceful because it becomes an open sandbox to just loot and kill scavs for some XP. It's wonderful. I love the map to death, and it will most likely always be my personal favorite. And that's not to say other maps in the game are bad, but they provide their own sets of challenges that some may enjoy and others may detest. Interchange, on paper to me, is the most interesting idea for a level out of all of the maps. An abandoned mall with tons of shops to loot and some locked up stores with powerful gear. Again, on paper, this sounds awesome. Unfortunately, and I've said this in the past, it's the execution of Interchange that is frustrating to many, myself included. The lighting has been a point of contention since the map came out, and BSG has tried for years now to fix it, and earlier this year, they did improve upon it by removing the fog. But it's still not enough, sadly. If the lighting was better, and the extracts weren't so restricted with how you get out, I think people would love Interchange. But right now, it's so close, but it needs a little bit more work to become fantastic. Reserve is a map that when it came out, everybody played the heck out of it. At the time of its release, it was by far BSG's most ambitious map to date. A full military base with tons of buildings, a small underground parking section, an observatory dome for the literal perfect conditions for sniping, and a moving train that functioned as an extract. Reserve had a lot going for it. And the base itself has so much wear to it that it really does feel like this was occupied by tons of troops for a long time. Gluhar is still there obviously and has taken personal ownership over the whole thing, but I mean in the full military scheme. I can see tons of soldiers living here going about their daily operations and the like. It's so cool to walk around and get a gist of what it might have been like to live on the base. Because again, one thing that BSG excels at with their maps is the subtle storytelling they do by what's left behind. And the two maps that probably do this job the best out of all of them is Streets of Tarkov and Terra Group Labs. Starting with Streets, this map is gigantic, even before its first expansion. Seeing the universe of Tarkov in an extremely dense and urban environment is so surreal. We had seen screenshots and tiny snippets of the map in action over the years, and for a while it felt like we were never going to see it brought to life. But lo and behold, Streets is now playable, and ignoring the blatant performance issues and talking strictly about the design of the map, nothing in the game even comes close. The largest map without a doubt, especially considering it has already been expanded once and is only going to get bigger over time. So many different buildings, stores, hotels, apartments, construction areas. Streets literally has it all, and it even goes underground in another parking garage. This feels like a living, breathing society, full of everyday people doing their thing in life, which is a shame to see it stricken with warfare between factions. So many homes deserted, so much vandalism and damaged property, but again, this all tells a story. Many rooms that can be opened show you more details about the people that live there, which I think is so important to really sell the authenticity of the map not feeling fabricated. And that's one thing all of Tarkov's maps have going for them, a level of authenticity that is unlike many other maps in the game. Items aren't just thrown in places without them having some real-world sense to them. There is a little bit of that, of course, but for the most part, you don't see things where you might not see it if it was a real place. Which brings us to the final map we're going to talk about, Labs. Labs is the only map in the game that is scary, and I'm not referring to its difficulty, but more so the meaning behind the map's inclusion and the lore implication it has. We know Terra Group were doing some heinous shit down there, and many people died as collateral for the company's sins. You can find the bodies of those who worked at the company thrown down an elevator shaft. Not the best place for hiding evidence, but an attempt nonetheless. Labs is also the only map to have this insidious droning sound that happens maybe every 10 to 20 seconds. Most other maps have ambient noise like wind, rain, whatever. But Labs is deep underground, so those elements can't be around. It's tense and stressful being down there. You don't belong, and you're just seeing the aftermath of the carnage that ensued. And it's empty, but for the most part, it's still clean. A laboratory that makes you ask nothing but questions. Even with the raid series and the books, we still don't have all the answers. Hopefully one day all the pieces are put into place and we can figure out what really happened down there. Tarkov's level design is bar none. At this point, it would be very difficult for anyone else to compete with the layouts, designs, interactions, mechanics, and storytelling that BSG is able to craft. I have always been impressed by what they have made. Even if there are maps I don't enjoy playing, that does not take away their significance to the game. Tarkov is better with them in the game, and hopefully the final map, Terminal, will live up to the hype, and we are finally able to actually escape from Tarkov. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Let me know in the comments your favorite elements of Tarkov's level design, and subscribe for more videos about the genuinely awesome things in the game that truly deserve praise. I hope to see you in future ones.